I'm not saying that if you miss one day of a diet or if you miss one event, then you won't have friends anymore. What I am saying is that the first time you miss an event, it's a mistake. The second time is a choice. Hello and welcome, ladies and gents. Welcome back to my podcast. My name is dannyfarajj, and today is a very emotional one, to say the least. And it's essentially the emotional maturity that someone has to go through in their lifetime. I have always believed that in order for me to be aware of everything that I'm doing, I also need to be emotionally aware. I need to be emotionally in tune with what's going on, whether it's the emotion that I'm feeling during an action or the control of my emotions over a specific problem that I'm having, whatever the case may be. I used to believe that in order for me to fully control my actions, I need to be in tune with my emotional maturity. As a step, it is, I agree, but it's not all that it is. What it all is, in my opinion, it's very ironic. لأنه you have to be emotionally aware of how you are in specific situations, but you have to not feel them to some extent. So the irony becomes you have to teach yourself to be more emotionally aware of yourself, but at the same time, you have to be so emotionally aware that you know how much of it you feel and how much of it you know, put down in a way. And so the balance of this is, I believe, what makes someone most effective. Because we don't want a crybaby, right? None of the people out there want a crybaby of a business owner. If they're so emotional and emotionally in tuned about everything they have, then there's no time for greatness. There's no time to execute. They're just gonna be feeling a specific way. But if you're having the skill of reading your emotions and then deciding to put it down or control it in a way to where you let it flow uninterruptedly and it doesn't interfere with your work, then fine. So it's so funny to think about because people keep saying you have to be more emotionally aware, but that's not the whole point. At least I don't believe that's the whole point. I love to learn as much as possible, but I'm the slowest to adapt to a specific action. And maybe if both are balanced, my urge to learn and my urge to execute are equal, then maybe things would have been different. I believe it would be. At the end of the day, we're so quick to judge others, but we don't judge ourselves. And most of the time, problems wouldn't have been problems had you been able to control yourself first. Just think about it. The only thing that's in your head for 24 hours a day is you and your brain and your thought process. So whatever you perceive, whatever your friend tells you, whatever you hear from work, whatever you need to do is all in your head. So the in a way, the rushing and the calmness is within, which makes me want to jump to the next topic of victimizing yourself. People that victimize themselves, if you blame others on your situations, you are just on another level of ignorance. And sure, there could be ways and specific actions and events that is not your fault, but maybe your reaction to them makes it your fault. Instead of just letting it be, you reacted to it a specific way and now it's your fault. I believe, in my humble opinion, that whatever you experience is your own, I don't want to say fault, but it's your own experience. And so whatever you choose to do with it, whether it's handling it properly or making a big fuss out of it is your own responsibility. Now, it's easier to say than do, and I know that. I know that for sure. But if you truly think about it, the things that you go through are caused by none other than you, because even your reactions to a specific action makes it yours. Hopefully that makes sense, because I think that's what the only thing that people need to understand. It's not that difficult to live life. It's not that difficult to prosper in life. What is difficult is choosing different realities for yourself. But once you choose it, it's like if you think about it, right? You try to work on something in your life. You try to lose the weight. You try to find more friends. You try to get a better side hustle. Now, if you try that for a specific amount of time and then you decide to stop, then everything else turns into a zero, which means if you do work, it's going to count. But if you stop doing work, it's going to count towards a zero. And you multiply a zero by any number, even if you put 100x to your efforts previously. But then after that, you stopped, then you're multiplying 100x by zero. Therefore, you have made zero progress. So it's not the fact that you're not putting the work in. You are putting the work in, but it's not being shown because at some point you're stopping. At some point you're not understanding where you need to be when taking an action or being responsible for something. I think that's the dividing factor of the people that see the difference and people that just envision the difference. They both may be putting close amount of effort in the same action, but one of them, once they stop, that's it. The other person, they continue going, then they start seeing the results sooner or later. So in a way, long story short, understanding your emotions and dealing with your emotions and controlling them, honing them, keeping them in check is quite frankly the number one thing you need to work on. I could speak for myself, but if you're someone who's listening and resonating with what I said, then maybe it's something you should do too. What do I know, huh? At the end of the day, you have your life, you have your decisions. You can listen to whatever you want, you can see whatever you want, but not until you work something out within your emotions, within your control, until you see the results that you want. We all would love if we can just work hard this one time and then it just reflects right away and that's it, happy ever after. But the way the world works, you have to constantly wake up and choose your truth, because you can easily wake up and choose to follow your desires, and then bang, everything you've worked on is slipping away from your hands. Now, I'm not saying that if you miss one day of a diet or if you miss one event, then you won't have friends anymore. What I am saying is that the first time you miss an event, it's a mistake. The second time is a choice. You choose to not hit the gym, to not go for a run, to not go to that event, to not talk to that person once again. We're humans in a sense where we ought to make mistakes, but we're smart enough to realize that after the single mistake, after the first mistake, it's our choice to make the second one or go back to the first, correct path that we've taken. And I think that goes back to you and your willpower and your understanding of yourself and understanding where you're heading. It's a lot to take in, but hey, the good news are you only have to care about one brain, and that's your brain. So I guess that's one problem to take away. You don't have to deal with multiple people and multiple. You technically have to deal only with your one brain. The challenging part is the shifting process. shifting from one state to another takes time. Once you're in it, once you're in the zone, once you're in the rhythm, it's okay. Like, you're good, you're chilling. All you have to do is just keep your activation energy up and going. But the choice of change, and putting in the work X amount of days while still not seeing the results, because it just simply takes time to see results. That's the hard part. That's the hard part, because you're putting in the work, you're getting tired, but you're not seeing anything in return. But if you go back to my previous episode, I said that this world works, but it lags a little bit. If you choose a different reality for yourself and you start executing on that reality, it's going to take some time to start seeing changes in your life. And that a bit of time leaves people impatient, including myself in the past, which is normal, but at the same time, you got to understand that that's what it takes for someone to change. It is not easy, but it is simple. There's a difference between simple, complex, and easy, hard. I believe life is very simple. It takes simple tasks to do, but it's hard because you have to continuously do it every single waking hour of your life. Thank you all for tuning in. Let me know in the comments. This question of this episode is, if you were to only choose two emotions to feel from now on, what two emotions would they be? What would they be and why? Alright, guys. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video.